Kia ora and welcome to the Navigating Breath podcast with myself, John Van Heunen. Got my cacao and just really looking forward to diving into some common basics that I think a lot of people can really benefit from. From working with clients, there's a bit of a thread of maybe 5 or so things that can be initiated into your life that don't require too much effort, but can have massive payoffs. And the first one of those is grounding. And that is the art of letting your bare feet touch the earth. And it really is just as simple as that. There's so many benefits to it, from reducing inflammation to aiding in sleeping better at night. And for some reason, we as adults have decided that the ground is dirty and that we need to wear shoes. I guess we were sold that idea as well, weren't we? Let's be honest. That we need to wear shoes all the time. And we've created that disconnection. And when we live in a society or a world that is full of positive ions, from Wi-Fi or our mobile phones or whatever, electricity, whatever sources that it may come from, that those positive ions build up in our body, and we have to get rid of them. Like a house has a grounding post in it, and we also need that. We also need that space for our body to reconnect to the earth and release. It's ironically called positive ions, but we actually don't want them in our body. And that can come as simply as just going outside and putting your bare feet on the earth and just allowing that frequency to flow down through your body and back to the earth. There's other practices that are amazing as well, like spending time in nature if you really don't want to get your shoes off. I know there's some places in the world where you potentially don't want to. So spending time in nature is another beautiful way to do so. For me, it's jumping in rivers or lakes or oceans, and just allowing myself to fully immerse myself in that natural environment. Yeah, I know from personal experience, often when I can't sleep, that's my go-to, is to go and stand outside and watch the stars. And sometimes it's raining and it's just part of it. It really is just about getting your feet on the earth and creating that connection. And the next one is hydration. That's a very common thread when I'm speaking to clients and I say, what is the first liquid to touch your lips when you wake up each morning? And often it's a coffee. And we know that caffeine is acidic and has its own, some people really enjoy it. I personally don't drink it, but what our body really needs and what it's craving is water. And it's not been drinking for ideally 7 to 8 hours, depending on how much sleep you get at night. Some of us a little bit less, but we have that time where we're not drinking anything and we can wake up feeling dehydrated. And the first thing what we really need to do is to drink some water. And our bodies, according to, well, I guess science, but also the Chinese meridian system, there's different aspects or organs that are in operation during that time when we're asleep. And so, there's a lot of toxins that are in the process, I should say, of being cleansed through the body while we're in those sleeping hours. Especially I think it's about 3 or 4 in the morning is when our liver is detoxing. So what we really need is to be rehydrated, to just to allow that toxic whatever it is that's being processed to be released. You'd be surprised how uncommon it is, and maybe this is your experience as well. Maybe there isn't the awareness around there, which is completely fine. For me personally, I like to drink water that's room temperature because I think of the body as like a radiator in a car, and if we have that radiator and we're either trying to warm it up or it's hot, the last thing we want to be doing is throwing cold water in there and blowing a gasket. So yeah, ideally we want that water to be lukewarm. I personally like to put a little bit of salt in there as well, just to get some minerals. Doesn't have to be much, just a pinch. And if it's available to me, half a lemon is also really beneficial. Yeah, I guess the next one is movement. And I think we can overcomplicate this one because we like to, me personally, actually, I'm just going from personal experience, I have often convinced myself that I need to have a gym membership or a yoga membership or whatever in order to be able to do movement. And what my years of walking have taught me is that no, all we really need to do is just keep moving our bodies. And that can look like just getting up and going for a walk in the morning or a walk after dinner. Just giving our bodies some nourishment in the form of blood circulation and allowing things to flow and shift. And I personally like to just go for a walk and not take my headphones, but just allow myself to be with whatever. It's like a walking meditation, I guess, to a certain extent. Just allowing things to arrive and for me to for me to lessen the complication of things, I should say, and just create some space. And often it's in those spaces that new ideas come through, or maybe I just am more present and enjoy being in the sunshine and or being present with whatever plants or whatever are around me. Or maybe movement comes in the form of checking on a YouTube video on how to do some yin yoga, or if you're feeling more lively, then a vinyasa or something like that. Just, I personally have really gotten into, that's out of reach, but really gotten into sledgehammers. And I bought one of those off Marketplace for $20, and maybe I can do a video on it, but there's so many movements you can do just using this one weight. And because you've got a lead at one end and a long handle, you can cantilever that weight. So you can get a surprising amount of resistance through this one simple device. But yeah, essentially it's so important to move our bodies. I really enjoy sitting on the floor when I eat or when I'm watching YouTube or whatever, just because it means that I've got to push myself up, or I can be doing stretching while I'm lying down or sitting down, and as opposed to being in a couch, which offers very little support, and although it can be comfortable, in the end it can be quite detrimental. The next one is food, which is it's a minefield. I'm well aware of that. And I'm cautious of how to approach this, but I will say from my experience of observation and lived experience that whether you do a vegan or a carnivore or a whatever sort of diet that's going on in the flavor of the month at the time, often what the real benefit is actually just in the stuff you're not eating. So if you go to a vegan diet, maybe the real benefit was that you used to eat lots of junk, and through shifting and no longer eating so much processed food. I think that's what it comes down to essentially. End of the day, eating processed food is the problem, right? We never had so many health issues until we started having vegetable oils and refined sugars and replacement items for natural foods. And so my personal journey with that is just to try eat as little from packaging as possible and try to eat proper veggies and proper meat and eat free range, or if it's available, organic. If that's not available, then just being conscious of the supply of things, avoiding things like heavy metals, and trying to get a good variety of food and going to vegetable markets, farmers markets. I'd hate to say it, but I am still a sucker for sourdough, and so I do still eat quite a substantial amount of that. But it's less processed. It only has 2 ingredients in it, and it's far less processed than most things. Yeah. I guess that also brings, to the point of fast foods and whatnot. And I can't remember the last time I had. I'm a sucker for pies, if I'm perfectly honest, but but good quality ones. But yeah, I can't say the last time I went to a fast food outlet, and I guess that was from, I used to grow up on that. I grew up on KFC, and now if I ever have anything like that, I can really feel it in my body and my mood, how it affects me. But also just when you go into those spaces, like just looking around, and often there's people with skin conditions, or maybe weight issues, or maybe it's just sad looks on their faces. And if I'm in a space like that, I am pretty sure that I don't want to be one of those people. So I just decide against eating there, essentially. Yeah, it's a tricky one because there are so many different directions you can go with different diets and health options, and we can get really lost in the source of it all. And so I think it's just important to find things that work for you and make your body feel good. And for me personally, that looks like smoothies for breakfast with drinking spring water, and protein for breakfast, and not getting caught in the whole fasting system because my body needs to eat something in the morning. That's just me personally. And so I'm going to do that. And yeah, eating decent vegetables and I love coriander, plenty of that, and those sort of detoxing foods. I'm really not going to school you on how you should eat, but yeah, there's just listening to your body, I think, is probably the biggest part of all of it, if I'm perfectly honest. Which just brings me to my next thread, which is vibes. And, often when we find ourselves in depressive states, personally, I find I can spiral down deeper and deeper and deeper. And, people will tell you, oh, you should just, practice gratitude. That'll help you out. And for me personally, I don't know why, but I really struggle with the idea of gratitude. And it wasn't until recently when I came across the term of appreciation rampage. That's what it's called. And I really love that idea because I think it's far easier to appreciate something than it is to be grateful of it. So I will appreciate, when I wake up in the morning having a warm bed, or I appreciate that I slept well, or I appreciate that I have a body that functions, or that the sun came out, or there's so many ways you can do it, and kind of the idea of the rampage is just you just go all in, and it really does help me to spiral things back out of what otherwise could be a headspin, and allow me to, I guess, bring some joy back into my life where otherwise I was unable to see it. And then once you're kind of out of that place and out of that tailspin, well, me personally, I find I can function more clearly. And you've got techniques like the daily breathwork practice, which I would practice every day, is another beautiful way to shift that mindset. We get really trapped in our thoughts, and I think my biggest issue in life is the belief that I give my thoughts, the trust that I give my thoughts. And when I really allow myself to step back and create space, I realize that they are just that. They're just thoughts, and they don't define me, and I don't necessarily need to believe all of them. There's a concept or a belief that all of our fears lead back to the fear of death. And when I step back and look at that, that's exactly how I see it. We fear stepping out in front of people because we fear that we'll be ridiculed for it. And that comes from an ancient fear that if we were ridiculed for something, we'd be kicked out of our tribe. And if we were kicked out of our tribe, then we would be alone and potentially either get eaten by another animal or another tribe or starve to death. And for some reason, our brains still believe that. When in actual fact, life doesn't have to be that, or isn't that challenging anymore. And I would say that a majority of my worries and stresses never actually eventuate into anything, which is very reassuring. And when I remind myself of that lens, that frame of reference, life becomes a lot less stressful. So yeah, I think just to recap on those few ideas, the importance of just getting your feet on the ground, drinking a glass of water when you wake up, just moving your body in some way, shape or form, being conscious of how you feel after ingesting a certain item of food, and I guess it comes back to bringing presence to the body and awareness, which is so often something we don't do when it comes to eating. Often we will, just cook the thing, devour the thing while we're watching some sort of video on social media or chatting to someone or scrolling or whatever it is, and carry on with our day in that way. And then there is no presence to the actual process of it all. So I guess it's bringing some level of awareness to it as well, which I also think is very important in life. There's that saying by Jung that when you make the subconscious conscious, you will no longer call it fate, is essentially the saying. I'm kind of butchering it a little bit, but the idea being that once you bring the subconscious into the conscious, then it'll stop running your life, and you'll realize that once it's brought to awareness, it has to change because it's in your awareness now. And if previous to that it was just a program that was built within you that just dictated how you responded, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, and then the beauty of the breath and its ability to help to regulate us as well, even if that just means coming back to the breath, through breathing through the nose, or just creating space, in challenging situations, how fast it is that we forget to breathe, and the importance of that process. It's literally why we are on this earthly plane right now. If we weren't breathing, we wouldn't be here. So yeah, really taking our time to acknowledge that, and yeah, when things do become challenging, to always come back to that is a beautiful place to ground into our bodies. So yeah, I think that's it for me today, and I hope that this was beneficial in some way. Yeah, if you'd like me to dive into anything else, or yeah, just feel like reaching out in any way, then yeah, please do so. I'd love to hear from you. I'm very new to this space, so it would be lovely to hear your thoughts and opinions. But until next time, wishing you all a beautiful day, and yeah, very grateful for you sharing the space with me.